Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us for today's webinar entitled Smart Labs, How to Solve the Connectivity Puzzle, presented by Asterix and LabFolder. Go to the next slide, please. As we get you introduced to today's session and the speaker, before we turn it over to Tomas, I want to tell you a little bit about Asterix if you haven't been exposed to us before. If this is your first webinar with us, we've been doing these now for about 7 months, where we're bringing thought leaders from around the world in the lab informatics space to present their views on, where the lab of the future is headed. But as far as who Asterix is, why we're doing this, we're an informatics professional services and strategic outsource company that works exclusively within the scientific community. A few quick stats about us. We were established in 1995. We're a privately held company today. We originated in the IT division of APBI Life Science Research Organization. And we have 7 offices in the United States and beautiful Costa Rica, and our headquarters are in Red Bank, New Jersey. Who we help is Fortune 1000 life science enterprises, chemical and CPG companies, government and research institutions, all with large and fast-growing IT or outsourced or compliance needs. And our mission always has and will be to deliver scalable, sustainable solutions for the scientific community. And we can go to the next slide, please. So real quick, when we talk about lab informatics and what role we as a company play in lab informatics, we offer end-to-end services that span the entire, life cycle of scientific data systems. So in the beginning, we work with companies to help them in business process analysis and enterprise architecture, and those services are really designed to help a laboratory understand what kind of technology they need, what their technology stack should look like. Is this a company that's getting ready to kind of migrate to the cloud? So we kind of help them to create that strategic vision of where they need to go, based on what kind of an organization they are and how they operate. Then we help with laboratory technology selection services and can even do the development and implementation of those systems. We're completely vendor agnostic. We've had 20 odd vendors participate in our webinar series. So we don't lean to any one vendor. We pick the best solutions based on needs and unique environment. When systems are deployed, we can do post-deployment computer systems validation. That's a very popular service that we do. Obviously heavy on the compliance side of the fence. And then we can also offer managed services where we can even help to maintain and run these systems and train and upgrade these systems for you after the fact. And we can even staff personnel, whether those are scientific personnel or whether those are IT personnel. So with that, I'd like to take a moment and introduce our speaker for today. We can go to the next slide, Tomas, that'd be great. And Tomas is the head of marketing at LabFolder. He holds a PhD in neurosciences with over a dozen papers published in the area of Parkinson's disease. He spent over 7 years in the lab, and he's experienced the impact that a digital ecosystem can have on lab productivity and the integrity of research. So at LabFolder, he's heading up the marketing team with a very clear focus on supporting labs throughout their digitization journey. Before LabFolder, he developed several products in the field of marketing and community management. And it is with great pleasure to introduce Tomas, and I'll let you take it from here. I'll be back on at the end.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for the intro. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for the presentation today with Asterix. Let me start by making a brief introduction about the company. So we are LabFolder, and as you can see from our slogan, our goal is to connect laboratories. And we've been doing it for almost 8 years. So since 2013 that we are in the market, and we have over 40,000 registered users that use our system. And as you can see from the map, we have customers worldwide that range from large academic organizations to small biotech and even government agencies around the world. Now, why do we exist? For many of us, including myself, we experience and work in the lab for many years, and we know in firsthand the many issues that exist when it comes to data management in the laboratory, up to the point that's nowadays a major bottleneck in our work. The reality is that every laboratory is a complex ecosystem of humans, devices, chemicals, protocols, reports, and software that all come from different vendors. Unfortunately, all of these things are disconnected. And although efficient and reliable exchange of information is crucial to achieve high quality of data and insights, this is not happening nowadays. So most of the time, everything that we have in the lab, it's working as a silo without communicating. This is a problem. Okay, the result is that scientists face extensive documentation efforts, repetitive tasks, errors, and data loss. In order to evolve, we need to speed up laboratory processes, and all of these entities need to be connected, and data needs to be managed efficiently. And that is the background for our mission. It is our mission to make all the different data silos within the lab ecosystem talk to each other. Therefore, at LabFolder, our mission is to connect hardware, software, and teams with the goal to streamline data acquisition and expedite groundbreaking discoveries by the many of laboratories that use our products. Now, throughout our experience in the lab and in the organization in LabFolder, we've learned that every single laboratory is different. But we also learned that all labs share a similar concept when designing a strategic plan to build a connected environment for their scientists. With that knowledge, we decided to build what we consider the ABC checklist if you want to build a truly smart and connected laboratory at your organization. Now, let's start with the A of the ABC, which is what you should avoid. And there are a couple of issues that are frequent in most of our organizations that can derail connectivity in the lab. The first and foremost, paper-based processes. In majority of our lives, we don't use paper anymore for what's important for us. We should not rely on paper for our scientific documentation. And those type of papers need to be quickly replaced because they are kind of the basic when it comes to a connected lab. We also seen in the past and in the future a big shift in mentality. In the past, there was this idea of self-built softwares that the company would develop, but then they were always a trouble to maintain. And this cannot happen anymore. Although in the past, self-built data silos looked nice and they were quickie and they were customizable to your needs, they become a problem nowadays when you want to put that information, that data to another place that might give you more insights about that specific data. Try to always avoid devices that don't offer connection capabilities, okay? And it can be SDKs, can be APIs, but don't invest on something that you're not sure that can help you build something around it, or that the software itself is part of a bigger ecosystem where everything communicates. I'll talk about self-build, and together with self-build, we have legacy solutions. We still see a lot of in small organizations that they are still relying on legacy solutions that they thought once it was nice, but is no longer adapted to the reality of the laboratory. Those solutions serve the purpose at their time. It makes no sense to keep using them if they are no longer enough to what you need to build your smart lab. And there's also an interesting concept that you need to be aware. You should never get the idea that everything is done. Look at the world around us. Look at the technology around us, right? There's always something new. There's always something new that's changing, that's coming, that's innovating a certain area of our lives. The same must happen to the laboratory. We don't believe that you will ever be done when it comes to building a smart lab, because once you solved an issue, there'll be another bottleneck somewhere that you can improve as the next step. The second part of the ABC checklist is basically what you should buy. Now, and also drives back from what you should avoid, right? So you should invest in software that have public and well-documented APIs. APIs is a system that allows softwares to communicate and to share information between them. So make sure that if you're investing, invest something that has an API, because that also gives capabilities of automation in the system. If you're buying devices to your lab, make sure that those devices have interfaces that allow for automating and monitoring them. If you're interested in that aspect of automation and monitorization, make sure that you pick providers that invest in open standards, like CELA or OPC UA. Those two standards are more and more common in the lab, and it will definitely have a huge impact if later on you want to integrate those devices in a bigger network. And like in our lives, there's invest in modular solutions. Never go for the monolithic solution. You're never going to buy everything from one brand. Like your house, your office is not everything from one brand. You might have preference from one or other, and you might have a couple of devices from them, but not everything is one brand. And if you're building a smart lab, you should take the same approach, okay? Buy the best solution for the problem you're trying to solve, even if it's from a different brand. Just make sure that what we're talking about in this checklist, you cross when you're looking for your perfect partner. The last concept I want to highlight is what you should consider when building or improving your laboratory connectivity. Focus on the data flow, and this is key, okay? Laboratory life is like a chemical reaction, right? There will always be a limiting factor. Figure out in your data flow, what is that limiting factor? What is blocking your scientists, your laboratory professionals to achieve better results faster? Once you identify that limiting reaction in the flow, then you can adapt it and make it better. This also means that you probably need to do incremental improvements. There'll not be probably a situation where you just solve all the problems at once. And like I said, once you fix the limiting solution or the limiting reaction in your chain, there'll be another one immediately after that you also need them to improve. You should also not think that building a smart lab should be an individual approach that you need to do on your own. And here we believe that partnering is key. Okay, partner with stakeholders inside the organization to find what are the pain points that need to be solved in the lab. Partner with external consultants that have experience and know how other organizations face the same pain points that you're trying to solve. But also partner with providers. My experience is that many of the providers out there are willing to work with the customers and make sure that what the customers want to achieve, their devices will be able to help them achieve that. Now, like any big change, be prepared to handle objections, okay? It's quite interesting to figure out that in the laboratory, if you look at the data flow, probably it's one of the things that has evolved less in the last 100, 200 years. People are still using paper notebooks, and paper notebooks are by far the most universal instrument in the lab. You know, so every time that you want to either digitize or improve a certain step, you face definitely objections. And coming up with a way to solve that objections, if you cannot do it on your own, you shouldn't have to. Again, talk with the providers, talk with the consultants. They've been through this dozens of times, and they know exactly what to say to handle those objections. Last topic that you should consider: make sure that you drive the change instead of waiting for the change. This sounds cliche, but it's something that we notice a lot. You know, people are using sometimes we talk with laboratories that say, oh, we're waiting for the top organization to make a decision. The top organization says, hey, we need to have every scientist on board to implement this. And without having a driving force that makes sure that things happen, you'll never, ever be able to build a truly connected laboratory, because you'll always be waiting for someone else to take the first step, and someone else is thinking exactly the same about you, okay? So if you're building a smart lab, take this ABC checklist and reach out to us if you then later on you want to have this list with you, because we've seen that if you cover all these topics with the checklist, we are confident that you will be able to take the first steps to build a truly smart and connected laboratory. Now, how at LabFolder we went from practice to solution. In our company, we have 3 software solutions that represent the user-facing tools to master important steps in the scientific workflow. We have LabFolder that helps scientists plan and document experiments plus storing results. We have Lab Register that helps preparing experiments with materials and devices. And then we have Lab Operator that allows you to execute experiments, automate laboratory devices, and monitor them. If you think about a scientific workflow, these three softwares can cover the entire process and kind of make sure that everything works in a seamless process. Nevertheless, there are two things that I think are important for us to highlight here. First is that the user-facing software features are essential, but the connecting backbone is the true power behind our solutions. So yes, we do have APIs in our software that allow you to connect and communicate between them. For example, when you're executing an experiment with our web execution system, web operator, the data from that run can be directly captured by a LabFolder, the electronic lab notebook. And this is something that I mentioned before when we're talking about focus on the data flow, right? The data always goes through different platforms and different softwares. Make sure that you can find a way to connect them and help them put in a complete ecosystem later on. Also, very important for us is that we go against monolithic solutions, right? So also our goal is not to say you should use all our products, okay? It is a modular system. For example, you can work with different ELNs or LIMS if you want to use our web operator system. In the past, we've worked with large pharma companies to connect their LIM software to our web operator. And this means that you can use each software individually in your pre-existing ecosystem and laboratory with other softwares, or you can just implement the full-fledged solution that everything stays in one single place. Again, it's 100% up to you and to what are basically the needs of your lab, but never go for a monolithic solution, okay? Never invest in that. Now, let me make a quick dive when it comes to our specific products. And let me talk about our most popular product, which is the electronic lab notebook. LabFolder is an API-first platform to collect all your data in one place. Now, you know that data can come from very different places. It can be something that the scientist writes, it can be an output from a machine, or it can even be a data analysis that the scientist has done after getting the results. In many of the labs, that data nowadays lives in very different places. In LabFolder, you can aggregate all that information. You can have manual input by the scientist that types directly in the software. Data can be uploaded, and our API allows you to automatically get data from devices and softwares and put them in the system, or you can also extract data from it and then to do further analysis. And this centralization of data is essential because it brings other capabilities that are important. And I also want to highlight that in LabFolder, we have a superb data retrieval system. And I always say this to everyone I talk in the lab. It's utterly useless to have a centralized place for data storage if you still cannot find your data. Without a proper data retrievability system, you are as good as you are with paper notebooks. In LabFolder, you have filter capability, you have entry reference, but more important, you have a data search system that can look for content that's uploaded by your team. So written documentation and results can be searched together. And the system also understands scientific quantities and units, meaning that if someone types microliters, you can look for milliliters and get the results. You can also look for less, more, or a range of amounts. The system itself also allows you to store protocols. In every organization that I've been, in every lab that I worked on, it was always the same situation. Our documentation was in paper notebooks, but our protocols already lived in a digital place, in a folder, in a driver, somewhere that everyone has access. But unfortunately, they were completely disconnected from our notebook. The fact that you cannot easily repurpose and reuse protocols brings a lot of data integrity issues. In that folder, you can store, manage, share all your protocols in one place, and each team member can then reuse and repurpose the protocols that have been shared with this person. Centralized data also means and needs to mean collaboration. And think about it, right? Usually what happens a lot in the lab is that the research has always been a collaborative aspect. People have always worked in projects together, but usually the documentation is not project-based. With LabFolder, we implement a project-based documentation, meaning that the data from everyone in one project ends up in one single place that everyone has access. This allows you to collaborate better, to provide feedback. And in LabFolder, for example, you also have capability of commenting on someone else's data and provide feedback on the go. Now, another very important aspect that we see nowadays is that a lot of laboratories are looking for the integration of electronic lab notebooks with inventory capabilities. In LabFolder, we also have an inventory system that, amongst other things, give you the possibility to generate barcodes and reference inventory items in the notebook. So your scientists, when they're using an item, they can just pull it from their inventory system, reference it in the notebook, while our advanced search then allows them to look for all the data that a certain inventory item was used. Most of our customers are industry customers or governmental customers, and for them, compliance is key. In LabFolder, we have several capabilities that allow you to be compliant in the laboratory with LabFolder. We have full audit trails, we have access control, and we have digital signatures. More important, we have an app that we call Signature Workflows that allows your laboratories to design custom workflows of document validation that can be adapted per project. Your QA team can say, hey, this project needs 5 signatures, and this should be the 5 team members. Another one just needs 2. And in our system, you can build these workflows for your team so that validation becomes an easy process. Things like integrity and validation should never be seen as a problem or never be seen as something that hinders development. We put a lot of effort in making sure that the entire system helps laboratories be compliant without having to worry about it. LabFolder also comes in 2 flavors, like I usually say. You can either use LabFolder on the cloud in an ISO 27001 compliant data center, or LabFolder can also be installed on a local server. This means that your IT team can manage permissions, can manage share settings, and can put the system behind a firewall according to the regulations of your organization. And that's why LabFolder nowadays is one of the most popular electronic lab notebooks in the market. Now let me talk to you about something pretty cool that we have, which is our Lab Operator, the laboratory execution system. This is a flexible connectivity backbone to automate lab execution and monitoring. Lab Operator is a unique IoT platform to connect laboratory devices and software from different vendors. Amongst our customers, there are many top pharma companies, for example, Bayer, Boehringer Ingelheim, and Roche, just to name a few. At the moment, we can connect more than 150 device types on the spot. So it's basically a plug-and-play situation. We can also add new devices to our portfolio, and this usually is a very straightforward process that, of course, always depends on the quality of the device's interfaces and the availability of interface documentation. Now, most of the devices that we can control and monitor are small tabletop devices, such as balances, pH meters, and stirrers. But we've also connected more complex devices such as 96 well-plate readers and UV spectrometers. And we're extending the scope towards other analytic devices. Our integration is also pretty pragmatic. The devices that only offer a RS-232 interface, we connect them through a connector box. To more modern and complex devices, our softwares, also other softwares, we connect through a virtual connector. Besides being able to control devices and collect data on the go, Web Operator offers an intuitive user interface to guide users through workflows. And these digital workflows are super interesting. Digital workflows is basically a smart protocol for your scientists, where basically It's a mixture of manual steps and steps data automatically gathered from the devices. And this helps your scientists and your team work faster while working a digital solution in the lab. You can also set up dashboards that allow you to monitor all your lab equipment and log data wherever data is generated. Because we want people to use these digital workflows in the lab, the solution is 100% mobile friendly. Meaning you can control individual devices or entire workflows from your tablet, wherever you are. We also want to empower the users that use the system. So you can also build your own workflows and dashboards, meaning that you don't need us for each and every little change that you want to make. And that's very important, right? It's your system, and you should be able to adapt it and command it and create the workflows that you need without every time depending on external partners to do so. In terms of security and compliance, the software is offered as a cloud or has an on-premise solution like LabFolder. And we offer all features and the qualification services you need to use LabFolder in a GMP environment. Now, LabOperator is a fairly new product, but there are so many use cases and benefits we discovered together with our customers. Let me just give you a couple of examples. In an R&D lab that uses LabOperator, you can basically control all your devices you need for chemical synthesis and also log manual steps with one click. The documentation is basically done in the background, saving the scientists more than 70% of their usual documentation time. In a testing laboratory working with cytostatic drugs, it enables automated hands-free documentation, meaning you save a second person that's usually needed for documentation so that the other person can focus on working with these highly toxic substances in a fully protected suite. In a QC lab, LabOperator guarantees data integrity for information that is generated in a process and that needs to be stored in a LIMS system. Besides that, LabOperator makes sure that the team members meticulously follow a specific protocol, and the modular structure of the workflows allows for easier validation. Also very important to highlight is that LabOperator is a connectivity-first solution, meaning that it lets you import and export data from and to any system you want. Like I said before, we are regularly connecting to LIMS and ELN systems, not only our own solutions, but basically to any system that's already in place. Now, we have a third product coming in the market, which is the Lab Register. At the moment, Lab Register is a feature within LabFolder, the electronic lab notebook. But our goal is to extract it from LabFolder and also make an inventory system, a sample tracking software that's also modular, that can live as its own software. We are not going into many details right now. Again, regarding Lab Register, if you want to give a sneak peek, go to our website and try LabFolder. You can see it, but stay tuned and expect to have the first open and connected first inventory and sample management solution in the market in the near future. Now, we follow the principles of connectivity and modularity with all our products. Together, they close the loop of planning, preparing, executing, and documenting laboratory work. We believe that only connectivity can possibly provide the most complete data sets that enable laboratory teams to generate reliable results and insights as fast as possible. But of course, this loop is not closed when it comes to other softwares. On the contrary, we are convinced that partnering with third parties is essential. For example, when it comes to analyzing specific data that is out of scope for us. Besides that, the customers we work with are the experts in mining and analyzing data themselves. They build their own tools and services to make more out of it. We just try to deliver complete and well-structured data sets. And this is by far, the last component is the most important, well-structured data sets. The lack of structure in research documentation is one of the biggest problems when it comes to finding data when it comes to retrieving data, and when it comes to presenting data in an audit, for example. Our goal is also to help laboratories to easily structure their research with all of our products so that when they need, they can find the data for any reason that they need it. We are also, because we believe in this partnership with multiple players, we are always happy to connect with other software providers, devices in the market, and of course, we always work with our customers. At the core, LabFolder is nothing more than who our customers are. And we work with them every single day to make sure that they have access to the best tools to document their data better, manage their inventories in a efficient way, or to just automate and monitor their laboratory devices with Lab Operator. Now, with this slide, I want to wrap up the part of the presentation. We hope that the learnings that we shared from the ABC checklist and also how we go through that checklist with our products has been useful for us. If you'd like to have a copy of the checklist, feel free to reach out to us directly, okay? We'll be more than happy to provide it to you. Also make sure that you check out our websites. LabFolder, which is a company website, LabFolder for the electronic web notebook and Lab Operator. We also want to thank Asterix for having us here for the talk today, and we are now open for any questions that you might have regarding the system.
Okay, great. Tomas, thank you very much. That's a wonderful presentation.